What's up guys, Rogue9 here. Far Cry as a series is well known for its many Easter eggs referencing earlier games in the series as well as other video games and beyond. So in today's video I want to explore some of the really neat Easter eggs of Far Cry New Dawn that you might have missed. Let's go! Our first Easter egg in New Dawn is a bit of a nod to the small army of dedicated Bigfoot hunters that spent considerable amounts of time trying to find the elusive beast in Far Cry 5. Throughout the game, there were repeated hints that suggested the presence of Bigfoot living in the forested hills of Hope County. There was even a prepper stash mission called Gone Squatchin', in which players had to follow the trail of a Bigfoot researcher named Dickie Dansky in order to loot his stash key from his dead body. RIP. Fast forward to Far Cry New Dawn, and after the nuclear annihilation of Hope County, the remains of Bigfoot tribes can be found at North New Eden Gate and during the mission Joseph's Secret. As it turns out, a decent dose of radiation poisoning is all that it takes to make the creatures much less elusive. One of the map locations in New Dawn is the Inquisitor's Grave, which of course is the bunker that you enter at the end of the mission to kill John Seed, the Inquisitor. This in and of itself is a bit of a throwback, but the actual Easter egg in this location is a Blood Dragon skeleton as featured in the Far Cry 3 DLC, well, Blood Dragon. Far Cry New Dawn wouldn't be a modern Ubisoft game if it didn't come with the obligatory photo mode, and here a lot of poses you can use are references to other games, movies or celebrities. The simple stuff is worth mentioning. Leap of Faith and Ezio are of course references to Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed franchise. Mira references the operator Mira from Rainbow Six, and Valkyrie is also there under the name Gunshow. Vaas, you guessed it, is Vaas from Far Cry 3, and the father is Joseph Seed from Far Cry 5. But there are a few more obscure references that many might not have recognized. Platoon is one of the best war movies from the 1980s and in my opinion possibly ever. Seriously, watch it if you're not familiar with it, maybe rewatch it if you haven't seen it in a while. And probably the most well-known scene from that film is depicted in Far Cry New Dawn with the pose Y. The pose Rockstar is a very clear reference to Freddie Mercury. When we think of super spy, James Bond comes to mind, but which one? Turns out it's Roger Moore. Pew Pew very much looks like 1/3 of the stereotypical Charlie's Angels pose, although I have to say that it was rather difficult to actually find an official reference image with this exact pose. Nevertheless, I'm sticking with that theory. Ninja is a well-known Spider-Man pose, and the superhero is literally every superhero ever. For example, Batman, Iron Man, Batman with loads of power armor, Superman, Batman again, but now he's Lego. And there are of course a bunch of other more generic poses, and some of them might be references to well-known poses, but I didn't recognize any of them. If you've played the game and you recognize any of the poses I didn't mention, feel free to leave a comment below. Since Far Cry New Dawn is set 17 years after Far Cry 5, it's no surprise that the animal companions from the previous game didn't quite manage to stick around long enough to be featured again. But with the help of some ingenuity, keen detective instincts, and a good handful of high explosives, you will be able to uncover Boomer's grave in the crypt underneath the new Fang Center. In the northeastern part of the Prosperity region, you will be able to find a fridge that is half submerged in the ground. Opening up the wooden cover to this fridge... I said opening up the wooden cover... Fine. Opening up the wooden cover to this fridge reveals a tan-colored fedora and a pile of bones. It appears that somebody was watching too much Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and thought that hiding inside a fridge would be the best way of sheltering from nuclear explosions. How did that work out for you? Yeah, it doesn't really work, does it? In 2018, a particular scene from the movie Avengers Infinity War between Tony Stark and Spider-Man was so gripping that it spawned a whole bunch of meme imitations, and it appears that Herc is also a big fan.
Oh, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good! Oh!
During the government plane wreck expedition, the plane wreck might seem rather familiar to many players out there, but in case you didn't recognize it, the wreck is in fact the C-147B Paladin from Splinter Cell Blacklist. If you activate the laptop that can be found sitting on a table, the ShadowNet mission briefing screen from Blacklist will flicker into life, and it appears that Sam Fisher and co. were tasked with responding to the nuclear attacks launched by Joseph Seed at the end of Far Cry 5. Further exploration of the wreck will reveal Fisher's famous stealth suit exactly where you would expect it, on the upper deck in Charlie's workshop, in the exact place where you could customize your gear in Blacklist. The aircraft's holding cell, infirmary and hangar have also been recreated in detail, and you can even find a letter pinned to the cell door that has been signed by Sam himself. Since New Dawn takes place in the same area as Far Cry 5, some of the Easter eggs of the previous game have made it across into the current one. Basically, it's a second layer of Easter egg, an Easter egg inception, if you will. For instance, there are these cave drawings in a cave to the west of Signal Point. These were already featured in Far Cry 5 and will be references to Primal. Herc is a recurring character that has been making appearances in various installments of the Far Cry series for some time now, and in Far Cry 5 we first meet him standing next to a pile of his belongings labelled Rook Island shit and Oros shit. These references to Herc's past adventures make a return in Far Cry New Dawn, and considering that these boxes are simple cheap cardboard, they have held up incredibly well. I wonder if they still contain Herc's stuff. This next one might not technically be an Easter egg, but it's really cool nonetheless. In an area of the map called Roughneck's Crag, you can find a bar where all of your NPC companions come to hang out when they're not with you. Spending some time here will get you a whole bunch of really cool interactions between the different characters whenever they bump into each other. If you didn't find this while playing the game, I highly recommend swinging by and seeing what the guys have to say to each other. A really easy to miss Easter egg is scratched onto the wall in the bunker that Joseph Seed and the deputy shelter in at the end of Far Cry 5. It appears that during their forced confinement here, either the deputy or Joseph wrote the words, "The world is a diagonal, I am the balancing point," which is a quote from Vaas' speech that he gives during his death scene in Far Cry 3. If you spotted this one while playing, bonus points to you because this was a tough one. So there you go, 10 of the coolest little references and Easter eggs in Far Cry New Dawn. I do apologize for it taking so long for me to get this video out. There were just a bunch of other videos that I had on the go in between. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next episode.